Hey cactus friends, it's Jenny from Cookies Cacti. So I went out to my shade house and grabbed some pots of seedlings that are pretty much ready for some repotting. Today I'm going to be focusing on the Saguaro seedlings right here. Let me zoom in on them so you can see them. You know, when I was starting on growing cactus from seed, I was constantly scouring YouTube and Instagram and looking at other people's seedling updates to kind of get a sense of how fast seedlings were expected to grow, so I could kind of have a feel. But I found out that it really depends on the climate that you live in. Saguaro are native to the Sonoran Desert, which is where I live in the East Valley of Phoenix, Arizona. So they tend to grow pretty fast, I would say, out here if you give them enough water. I do find that they tend to like a little bit more water, which is interesting. So these guys are, they were sown last year, I think June, like late June of 2021. So they've just passed their first year birthday. And you can see how they look. They've been transplanted, I think, at least a couple of times by now. And I made a lot of mistakes with these guys in the beginning, too. These were definitely my first batch of Saguaro seedlings. So let me grab a ruler so you can kind of see. The largest plant is roughly about 3/4 of an inch. Oh, you're not going to be able to see that with the clear ruler. Or about 2 centimeters or so for the largest one. So 1-year-old, about 2 centimeters or about 3/4 of an inch. But I'm going to repot these, and I'm going to follow exactly the same formula of the potting mix, which was that Miracle Grow seed starter and Miracle Grow perlite, roughly 1-to-1, at the most 2-to-1 ratio of perlite to seed starter mix. Exactly the same formula that I use for my Copia poa seedlings, if you saw that video. And then over here I've got some mammillaria. These are all mammillaria. I'm going to repot them. Here's a mix of plants that were grown from my own seeds. They are Mammillaria grammii and Mammillaria camptotricha v curvispina, I think. Look at that. They're like pushing out of the pot, which is interesting. Here's a pot of Mammillaria scheidiana and candida, Mammillaria candida. Again, these guys are still small, but I just sowed so many seeds in a pot that they're squeezing each other. You can see that the side of the pot is even slightly deformed. So I'm going to repot these. And then over here I've got Mammillaria nehepensis. Oh, by the way, these were seeds purchased off of a seller on eBay, I believe. These were Mammillaria, or are Mammillaria nehepensis, that were grown from seed off of my own plant. And they had already been repotted, and you can see they're not completely crowding out the pot, but they're growing pretty fast. So I think I'm going to go ahead and split them up. And then I've got one more little tray here that I'm considering repotting, just the Astrophytum ornatum. I think everything else can stay, but it will be tricky trying to get just the ornatum out. They're growing faster than other Astrophytum species, so I thought I would try to get them out and give them a little bit more space to grow. One thing I learned after doing a tray like this is I'm not going to mix genus or genera of cactus into the same tray anymore, unless they're just very similar. They grow at different rates, they have different needs. Like the Epithelantha over here, I feel like needs less water, whereas the ornatum and the other, and this is Coryphantha over here, but the other ones seem to be less rot prone and tend to like more water, whereas the Epithelantha, I have a feeling that they tend to like to be drier. So I will not mix genera of plants together again when I sow seeds. Even in Astrophytum itself, ornatum tends to grow faster than the other species. Like Asterias is really slow. Myrastigma is kind of in the middle. So if you were to sow, all those different species together and they're growing at different rates and most likely have different care needs or water or even light needs, it just makes it really difficult when they're all together. So I would recommend if you're growing from seed and you're new to it, separate the genera and even in some cases separate the species into different separate pots. I'm not going to let this video be as long as the Copiapoa repotting because really the formula is exactly the same. But it's just nice to kind of get what the seedlings look like at this point. Ta-da! Through the magic of video editing. So I've got 5 pots. I counted, I think there's about 16 plants in this tray, and then I'm thinking maybe doing about 4 plants per 3-inch pot. So I've got my soil all filled in the pots and tamped down with my little trusty tamper that my dad made for me. And I am ready to start repotting. This is always the interesting part when getting these plants out of the pot for the first time in a long time to see what they look like. These guys are so spiny that it's going to be interesting. How am I going to do this? It's like a cake of seedlings. Oh, look at that. I guess that's one nice thing about these produce things, or produce containers, is that they're just, I'm probably not going to reuse this. I could just cut it away if I wanted to, but I think this works fine. Oh, look at that. I just watered this earlier today. Outside sweating nonstop. All right, whoa. All right, now it's just falling apart. Let's see what we've got. I'm gonna try not to remove too much of the old soil. Well, I don't know. I'll just do it like that. It's the same composition. You can see this looks really similar to the new soil that I have prepared. It's exactly the same. Miracle-Gro Perlite and Miracle-Gro Seed Starter, and they seem to really like it. It's going to be interesting as they get older to see if they continue to like it or if at some point I'm going to have to switch up the mix as they get older and larger. They have reached the size, where they can store a little bit of water now. So maybe you don't have to probably water it less frequently. Right now what I'm doing is because this soil mix is so light when it's dry, it's just so easy to feel it out. So I just pick up the pot to feel how light the pot is, and that determines when to water for me. And pretty much whenever it feels really light, I water. And as long as it has some weight to it, I leave it alone. You know what, let me try doing a close-up. So these saguaro seeds were harvested off of some fruit on my parents' property. So the parent plant, I'll put a picture up of the magnificent parent plant, the mother plant of these saguaro. That plant is on my parents' property. It is the oldest saguaro and the largest saguaro on their property. And last year there was like the saguaros were like doing a super bloom, and there were a lot of flowers and a lot of fruit, but really all the birds and mostly the birds I think eat the fruit, and then all the little insects and little critters pretty much ate all the fruit, but they left just the shell of the fruit, like the skin of the fruit left over. And along the inside of the skin of the fruit were some seeds. And I have a picture of that, so I'll put a picture up now. You can see what it looked like. So I just scraped off what few seeds were, and actually it's a decent number of seeds. I think every saguaro fruit can have up to 3,500 seeds on them. So I just scraped those seeds off of the inner skin of the saguaro and sowed them. And I have some pictures of what the seedlings look like when they first germinated. They're really funny looking. They have those cotyledon leaves, I think is what they are. They don't look anything like the plant itself. And then as they get older, the the actual cactus body grows out the center of those cotyledons, and then you'll start to see, the first spines have formed. Woohoo! It's really cute. Quite fun to grow from seed. They do tend to like the heat. So that plant, the mother plant, is my mom's favorite, I think, cactus on their entire property. And I have some notes here on saguaro growth rate, but in the wild, it takes them about 10 years to reach 1.5 inches tall, about 30 years to reach 2 feet tall. On an average of 55 years old is when they start to flower. And then their first arms will start growing somewhere between 50 and 100 years. So that plant on my parents' property, it's got numerous arms on it. Guessing it's got to be, 120, 150, 180 years old, which is incredible. The other thing about saguaro flowers is that they are self-sterile. So you got to get pollen from probably a different plant in order for the successful pollination to occur in the flower. So who knows who the father is? And my mom named this plant Julius. At the time, I think she was reading a lot of books on like Roman history. She named it Julius. But he is the mother of the saguaro. Look at that. Pretty cool, huh? So I'm guessing that Julius is probably about 25 feet tall, 25 to 30 feet tall or so. I've stood next to him and he's probably 4 times my height, maybe a little bit more. And I'm about 5'7", so he's pretty tall. I just can't imagine how long he's been standing on that property, or on that land. Even let's say he was 150 years old. 100 years ago was 1920. Another 50 years before that, probably germinated in the late 1800s, which is amazing. Just like when we talk about trees, right? Trees can live a long time. And then when you think about the probability of these cactus to grow, to germinate, let's say, first, and grow into maturity, the probability is like almost none. So it's like an absolute miracle that those plants can reach that type of age in habitat. The chances of being eaten by an animal or dying from drought or exposure, or even dying from freeze, the chances are so high. And for them to reach the level of maturity to this degree is incredible. So in 2020, Arizona broke a record that is a record nobody wants to break. The monsoon storms didn't really come in that year in 2020, and usually it's the humidity in the monsoon storms that help cool down the Sonoran Desert, and that year it didn't happen. I think we had over 50 days of over 110 degrees Fahrenheit, which was just rough on everybody, and it was really rough on the plants. I watched a couple of very mature saguaro in my neighborhood die. One of them, I saw that the arm had fallen off. Oh my gosh. And then more arms fell off, and then the entire plant died that year. There were a lot of plants that died in 2020. And then what happened last year is a theory that because of that heat and that drought, that lack of water from 2020, 2021, the saguaros were just super blooming everywhere. Like they were blooming in a pattern that was unusual, because usually the flowers are at the top of the plant, but last year some of the flowers were traveling down the ribs of the plant, which was really unusual. The theory is that that due to the the conditions from the past. Gosh, we've been in drought for a long time. But those plants were just like, okay, we're going to, go over time on blooming to try to ensure survival of future generations to plant. And so that's what happened. Interestingly enough, so that was last year with the super blooms. So this year, my parents have 2 plants on their property that are mature enough to flower, and neither of them flowered this year. So maybe they spent all their energy last year blooming and producing fruit. And this year they're just like, yeah, we're taking a break. It was really sad to see that year, just the plants dying all over the place. And it wasn't even like lack of water. It could have been just the heat alone. Like these plants don't do well when the low temperatures overnight stay above 85 degrees, I think, Fahrenheit. Some of them will start going dormant when that happens because it's so hot that they can't open their stomata and do their whole metabolism thing at nighttime. All right, so I have completed repotting of the saguaro seedlings that were in that tray. So here's what it looks like. So how would you guess, how long do you think these seedlings can stay in here? We're going to leave them in here until they're almost touching each other again. I guess we'll find out. These are the pioneer seedlings, so I'm certainly still learning from them. So these were repotted in moist soil, just like I do for my mature plants and how I did for my copiapoa. And I probably won't water them for about a week. I'll let their roots, any damage in the roots have a chance to heal before I introduce the roots to water again. So these are my saguaro seedlings. I hope you enjoyed the repotting. This is a shorter one, but I will be back with more. Take care. Bye-bye. You know what? Since I'm in my house, I just thought I would show you some of my other cactus seedlings and actually succulent seedlings that I have growing under the grow lights. You've already seen all my copiapoa, but let me show you some of the other plants that I'm growing. So I've got these Astrophytum. This one pot is actually my first Astrophytum that I ever grew from seed, and first cactus actually ever that I grew from seed. The majority of the seedlings are outside in my shade house. I kept one pot indoors just to see how it would do compared to the ones outside. There's like a 2-headed one that's doing very poorly. I think it's almost dead. Then I have these that are like Myriostigma hybrids. And these were from seed off of my own plant, one of the chunky Astrophytum hybrids that I have under my pergola. These I think I started in June of 2021, so they just turned 1 year old, and you can see that they're actually a little bit bigger than this first batch, which is a couple months older. They're growing faster. I'm going to wait a while till they outgrow the pot, and then I'll repot them. And then over here, just wanted to show you my obesa seedling. This was a seed harvested off of my female obesa or Euphorbia obesa plant, the one that I actually demoed and in my Euphorbia obesa flower video. But this obesa seedling I think is about 10 months old or so, and look at that compared to the copiapoa. I mean, these here, let me do it like this. 1 year old Astrophytum, 10-month-old obesa, Euphorbia obesa. Look at that size difference. So that's why Euphorbia obesa are quite fun to grow from seed, because they grow relatively quickly. I mean, it's still slow, but it's faster compared to a cactus. Here, I'll do another comparison. So this is 10 months old, and then these are copiapoa that are also 10 months old. Look at that. Look at that size difference. So, highly recommended if you want to grow some obesa from seed. Alright, now it's for real. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care. Goodbye.